Okay, we were actually discussing the phenomenon of quantum mechanical tunneling. This happens with particles which obey quantum mechanics. That essentially means that light particles, very light atomic and nuclear particles will exhibit this phenomenon of tunneling. And the problem that we were thinking of is drawn on the board. There is a barrier of width A and it has a height of V0, and a particle of mass m is incident from the left hand side, that is actually represented by this wave function, and the possibility is that the particle may get reflected, which is represented by that part of the wave function, or the particle may go to the other side, which is represented by this part of the wave function, and in the region of the barrier you see the wave function is given by that expression. And we did a lot of algebra, and we eventually arrived at an expression for f divided by a, which is reproduced on the board, and the quantity that we want to calculate is actually the square of the magnitude of f by a. Why is it so? Well, you see the number of particles that are incident from the left hand side is essentially determined by a. In fact, it is proportional to magnitude of a square, and the number of particles that come out on the other side. If we had done this experiment with a beam of particles, the number of particles that will come out on the other side will be determined by magnitude of f square. So therefore, the transmission coefficient or the tunneling probability for the particle will be given by magnitude of f square divided by a square, magnitude of a square. And so therefore, I want to calculate this. How will I calculate this? Well, you see, I shall calculate the magnitude squared of that quantity and divide it by the magnitude squared of that quantity. That is all that I need to do. So let me first calculate the magnitude square of this quantity. So you see, you have 2 kappa ik e to the power of minus ika. So this is a complex number, and if you had any complex number, how will you calculate its magnitude square? All that you need to do is you take the number, multiply it by its own complex conjugate. So when you take the complex conjugate of this, you are going to get minus 2 kappa I k e to the power of plus ika. Notice what has happened, there was an I here and therefore I have put a minus I, and there was a minus I here that I have converted to plus I, and if you calculated this, the result is the following. This term and that term will cancel each other. You are going to get 4 kappa square k square, and this I and that minus I will give you minus I square, but remember I square is minus 1, so therefore the net answer is just 4 kappa square k square. In a similar fashion, I am going to calculate the magnitude square of this. Notice that you see this is actually of the form some constant which I may refer to as alpha, and another constant which is this one, I shall denote it as beta. Well, this part I am denoting as alpha and that part I am denoting it as beta, so therefore it is of the form alpha plus I beta. And I want to calculate magnitude of this square, and if you know a little bit of complex, if you know a little bit about complex numbers, you would realize that this is nothing but alpha square plus beta square. And so what I have to do is I have to take the square of this, add to it the square of that. So what would be the result? It is going to be k square minus kappa square sin h kappa a you take the square of this and square of that, add to it the square of that term, which will be 4 kappa square k square cos square kappa A. Okay. And let me continue this up here, k square minus kappa square whole square sin h square kappa A plus 4 kappa square k square. You have cos square of kappa A, but there is a trigonometric identity which is useful, which says that cos square x can be written as 1 plus sin h square x for any x. So, I am going to use that, and hence I am going to get here 1 plus sin h square kappa A. And that actually is equal to, you can see that there are terms common in, right, there are terms that contain sin h square. So, I will write this as sin h square kappa A into k square minus kappa square the whole square plus 4 kappa square k square plus 4 kappa square k square. And this is nice. Why is it nice? Because I can immediately simplify this part. Let me just write the answer, because it is simple. So, that is the answer. So, we have evaluated the magnitude square of the numerator, we have also evaluated the magnitude square of the denominator, and you can use these results to get an expression for f square divided by a square, which we will refer to as the tunneling probability or the transmission coefficient and denote by the symbol capital T. So, what is the answer? If you collected all these results, the result is 4 kappa square k square, that is this term, divided by 4 kappa square k square, that is actually this term that I am writing, or this term that I am writing, so this is the answer for T. And we can write it in an even simpler form by saying that, okay, I will divide numerator and denominator by this term. So, therefore, you will have a 1, and if you divided the denominator by that term, you will have a 1 here also. So, therefore, you will have 1 divided by 1 plus k square plus kappa square the whole square divided by 4 kappa square k square sin h square kappa A. So, this is our final expression for the transmission coefficient, or in the case where the energy of the particle is less than the barrier height, we usually refer to this as the tunneling probability. And now, if you like, we can actually substitute the expressions for k square and kappa square. let us do that. I have the expression for k square, I also have the expression for kappa square. So, if you substituted those things, let me do it here. Well, this is a fairly straightforward substitution. I shall just write the answer. I will write this kappa A in more detail, and I am going to get so this is the answer written in a little bit more detail. And this expression is nice because it tells you how the tunneling probability or the transmission coefficient actually depends upon the height of the barrier, which is contained in here, it is contained in there also. It also tells you how it depends upon the energy of the incident particle and as well as on the width of the barrier. Now, also remember that I have derived this assuming that energy of the particle is less than the height of the barrier. So, let us imagine a situation where the particle is rather heavy, maybe something like a carbon atom or something like that. Okay. Well, strictly speaking, what I should say is this object is much larger than unity, suppose. That is the limit that I would like to think of. In order for that to happen, you see, either mass has to be large or the barrier height has to be large or the width of the barrier has to be large. If one of these things is satisfied, so that the net term, this net term is much larger than 1, then you can see what is going to happen. See, sin h square or sin hx actually is e to the power of x minus e to the power of minus x divided by 2. And if x is very large, which is what we are thinking of, this e to the power of minus x can be neglected. And therefore, under that limit, this will become 1 divided by 1 plus V0 square divided by V0 minus E into E divided by 4 sin h square. Actually sin hx may be approximated as e to the power of x divided by 2. So, therefore, I shall have e to the power of square root of 2m V0 minus E divided by h cross square, the square root covers that h cross square also, e to the power of a. I have to take the square of that. Oh, okay, this is the answer. And further, you see, if this term is very large, I am safe in neglecting this 1 in comparison with that term. So, let me forget that term, this 1, and hence what is the answer that I get? Well, I seem to have forgotten a half which should have been here, because the sin hx is given by e to the power of x divided by 2. So, now again I can simplify this expression. In this particular limit, the answer that I get will be 16 E V0 minus E divided by V0 square e to the power of minus 2 So, this is the result that I get. Now, this is an interesting expression. Why is it interesting? The reason is this. See, remember, V0 is the height of the barrier and A is the width of the barrier. So, suppose I make the height of the barrier larger, that means I am increasing the value of V0. What will happen to the tunneling probability? The answer is physically obvious. If I made the barrier more difficult to go through, then obviously the tunneling probability will decrease. And that is actually reflected in the equation. You see, you have V0 in the exponential. So, if you increase V0, what will happen? This term is going to get smaller, right? Because V0 is in the exponent with a square root, it will get smaller, of course. And further, if you made the barrier width larger, that means you are going to increase the value of A. Again, as expected, you will find that the tunneling probability decreases. Again, you should remember that it is decreasing in an exponential fashion, and therefore the decrease is rather rapid. As you make the barrier wider and wider, the probability that the particle will pass through decreases very rapidly. And again, you can ask, how does it depend upon the mass of the particle? Well, if the particle is very heavy, then you would expect that it obeys classical mechanics rather than quantum mechanics, and in classical mechanics the particle will never go to the other side. And you look at this expression, you have m sitting again in the exponent. So, if you increase the mass of the particle, the probability that the particle will tunnel through decreases again very rapidly. And so, in fact, actually it is found that electrons, of course, can tunnel very easily, but in comparison with that, a proton, which is much heavier, will tunnel with a much lesser chance. And if you think of an atom like carbon, it is much heavier than the hydrogen, and therefore there are almost no cases except maybe one that I know of, where a carbon atom actually tunnels through a barrier. Okay, now to get an idea of how the quantity T depends upon V0, E and A, I shall make plots. I shall show you the plots. And in order to make the plots, you see, I shall make use of some variables which do not have dimensions. So, what I shall do is, I shall measure the incident energy of the particle. Incident energy of the particle is E. So, I shall think of having the variable E divided by V0, and you can see E is energy, V0 also is energy. So, E by V0 is dimensionless. Similarly, from here I can introduce another dimensionless object, which I shall define as delta, and delta will be defined to be equal to h cross square divided by two m a square. Let me just check this definition. Okay. So, this is a delta. If you look at this, you see delta depends upon the mass of the particle and the width of the barrier. And if you calculated the dimensions of this quantity, you will find that the dimensions are that of energy, and therefore I can have another dimensionless quantity which is V0 divided by delta. So, what I will do is I will make plots in which I shall show the tunneling probability or the transmission coefficient as a function of E by V0, right. E by V0 will be taken along the horizontal axis, T will be taken along the vertical axis, and I shall make the plot for different values of this ratio, different values of V0 by delta. Okay. Let us look at such a plot. See, for example, this plot is for V0 by delta equal to 25. Remember that V0 by delta is dimensionless, okay. And for such a situation, if you plotted T as a function of E by V0, you will see that the result is this blue curve. And just to compare, what I have done is that I have also plotted the transmission coefficient for a classical particle. You know that for a classical particle, if the energy is less than V0, if the energy is less than V0, you see you are in this range where the horizontal axis varies from 0 to 1. So, in that range for a classical particle, T will be equal to 0, and if E is greater than V0, you are in this range, and for a classical particle that the value of T will be equal to 1. So, therefore, in this range you have classically you have T equal to 0, and in this range you have classically T equal to 1, and therefore, you have a step function like appearance. So, that would be the case if the particle behaved classically, but quantum mechanically, if you say that V0 by delta is equal to 25, the curve is this blue curve, and you can see that even in the case where the energy of the particle is less than the height of the barrier, the particle can actually go through. This part shows that there is a finite probability of tunneling for the particle. Okay. And the other thing that you should notice is that even if the energy of the particle is greater than the height of the barrier, for example, here the probability that the particle will go through is not unity. Classically it would have been unity, but it is not so in the case of a quantum mechanical particle. For example, at this value of E, the transmission coefficient is only 0.4, which means that if I had 100 particles incident on it on the barrier, only 40 of them will go through, the remaining 60 will be reflected. So, it is actually possible to derive an expression for the reflection coefficient also. What would be that? R would be given by 1 minus T. T is the transmission probability or transmission coefficient, and therefore, the reflection coefficient will be given by 1 minus T. You can calculate that also. Now, suppose you had a different value for V0 by delta, what would happen? Well, this is for V0 by delta equal to 16, and I also have a plot for the case where V0 by delta is 1. This means that the V0 by delta is 1. What does it mean? This actually means that you see either the mass of the particle is very small, or maybe the width of the particle is very small, and in such a situation what happens? You can see the plot. If you plotted T against E by V0, you get this curve which shows that there is considerable probability that the particle will tunnel through, which is not surprising because you see it is a light particle, so it would go through the barrier as a wave and go to the other side. Okay. Now, coming to its importance in chemistry. Well, this expression which I just rubbed off, I actually needed it. It is 16 E into V0 minus E divided by V0 square e to the power of minus 2 into square root of okay. Now let me tell you the different phenomena in which tunneling, different experiments in which tunneling can be observed. The most important one is actually this technique which is referred to as the scanning tunneling microscope. So, this is a technique which is now very widely used. It has enormous application in chemistry. What is done is you have a very sharp metallic tip, something like that, and it is believed that the tip is actually perhaps only one atom at the end, and it is a metal, and what you do is you bring it near the vicinity of another metal, and you bring it maybe within about 2 angstroms or 3 angstroms or 6 angstroms, I mean a few angstroms. Now, you know that there are free electrons in this metal tip. There are also free electrons, which are free to move anywhere in the metal. There are free electrons here, there are free electrons there, but this portion is just vacuum. So, therefore, you see, if you think of an electron in the tip, it can move freely anywhere within the tip, and that electron of course can move freely anywhere in this region, but you see in this region there is no metal, and therefore, that region would act as a barrier. So, the situation is analogous to this, but of course, this is in 3 dimensions, where what we have considered is a 1-dimensional example. So, what you can do is you can actually bring the metal close, this tip close to the metal surface, and then apply a potential difference between these two, and that potential difference will actually cause the electron to tunnel through the barrier to the other side. If you apply a potential difference, you can actually observe a current because of this tunneling process, and this is a technique that is immensely useful in surface science. So, this is one application, and the other application that I would like to mention is in enzyme kinetics. Now, there are hydrogen or proton transfer reactions occurring in biological systems, and these usually are catalyzed by enzymes, and hydrogen or proton, you know that they are rather light in comparison with other nuclei. So, if you think of a proton, okay, it is 12 times lighter than the carbon atom. Okay. If you think of a hydrogen atom or a proton, it is roughly 12 times lighter than a carbon atom, and therefore, its mass we can say is small, okay. And in such a situation, it is actually possible for a reaction to proceed by proton tunneling. I mean, I suppose you know a little bit about chemical reactions. See, whenever you have a chemical reaction, there is a barrier that the system has to cross. The barrier is usually represented by something like this, okay. And so, imagine you have a proton on this side, it can actually, in general, what it will do is the proton has to climb over the barrier to the other side, that we normally say is thermal activation. But on the other hand, because proton is a quantum mechanical object, it is possible for the proton to tunnel over the barrier and go to the other side. And it has been suggested that it occurs in enzyme kinetics, and it has been suggested that tunneling actually speeds up the process, speeds up the reaction up to perhaps about 1000 times. So, that is another very interesting application, or another very interesting system where tunneling occurs. Then if you remember your organic chemistry, you see there is this molecule cyclobutadiene. This is cyclobutadiene. This is an unstable molecule because it does not satisfy the Huckel's 4n+2 rule. It has only 4 electrons in this conjugated system, and as a result of that it is unstable. Okay. But I mean, if you look at the ground state of the molecule, the geometry actually would be like this. You have 2 ethylene like bonds and 2 single bonds here, so that the system actually is like a rectangle. And at very low temperatures, if you can keep the system at very low temperatures, and if you keep it isolated from other cyclobutadiene molecules, so that there is no reaction between the two, perhaps you can put it in an argon matrix and keep it at very low temperature, then you can actually isolate the system. But then if you think of this molecule, you see it can also, let me just number the carbon atoms, 1, 2, 3, 4. You can have, this molecule can have an arrangement where the double bonds are not between 1 and 4 and 2 and 3, but they may be like this. So, the double bonds are between 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. It is the same molecule, but the way the bonds are distributed among the carbon atoms is different, but this and that would have the same energy, and hence you see if you made the molecule with this arrangement, it is actually possible for the molecule to change over to that arrangement. But of course, to undergo that change, what should happen is that these 2 bonds should elongate and those 2 bonds should contract, and that requires energy, and therefore, to go from here to there is a barrier. But it has been suggested, okay, it has been suggested that this process occurs through tunneling, and this is very interesting. This is why is it interesting, because you see in here the atoms that are moving actually involve carbon atoms also, and therefore, this is not a hydrogen atom tunneling, but the tunneling process involves carbon atoms also, and so this would be an example where a much heavier atom tunnels. Then another interesting process where tunneling is very important is nuclear fusion. You know that the sun gives out its light because fusion reactions happen in the sun. Okay. So, what is fusion reaction? Well, you see, imagine you have 2 nuclei, well, let us say one nucleus here, maybe a proton or some nucleus, it does not matter what it is. The nucleus will be positively charged, here is another nucleus, I mean it may not be a single positive charge, but let us say, just for the sake of simplicity, let me just put 1 plus sign on each one of them. So, these 2 nuclei have to come together and react to give a heavier nuclei, they have to fuse together to give a heavier nuclei, to give a heavier nucleus. So, because these are positively charged, there is repulsion between the two. So, as the two are approaching each other, what will happen? If you plotted the total energy of the system as a function of the distance between the two, let me say the distance between the two is denoted by capital R, and if you plotted the energy of the system as a function of the distance between the two nuclei, see there is Coulombic repulsion between the two nuclei, so what will happen, the energy will actually go on increasing to a large value, but then when they are sufficiently close to each other, right, the particles within the nucleus will feel, within this nucleus will feel the attractive interaction with the particles of the other nucleus, nuclear forces essentially, as a result of which the energy of the system will turn around and come down, and that is why the fusion reaction can actually take place. Okay, it will turn around and come down, and therefore suppose you see you are bringing the two nuclei together with an energy, with a kinetic energy of, let us say, that much. Okay. Now obviously you see this is not enough to go over the barrier, and in fact if you think of the sun, you see the average kinetic energy with which the two nuclei come together is not enough for the system to go over the barrier and fuse together, and therefore in the sun when a nuclear fusion reaction takes place, it is always through tunneling. So what happens is that the system tunnels through here, and then the two fuse together. And finally one more interesting example. You know that in your mobile phones you have touch screens which are sensitive to touch, and something like 3 years ago people have made a film. So this is a film which is actually touch sensitive and which works based upon quantum mechanical tunneling. So imagine you have a polymer film and you have metallic nanoparticles embedded. Okay, maybe I should draw a bigger figure. This is a film and you have metallic particles, nanoparticles embedded in the film, and it is actually possible for electrons to tunnel from this metallic nanoparticle to that metallic nanoparticle. Of course, you see the distances should not be very large, it may be something like, because these are electrons that are tunneling and they are lighter than protons, and therefore they can tunnel over larger distances, but maybe something like 16 angstroms or 20 angstroms or maybe less, which is the distance that they can tunnel, right. But notice that you see the tunneling probability is very sensitively dependent upon the distance between the two particles or the height of the barrier. You see here you have a metallic nanoparticle, there you have a metallic nanoparticle, and you probably have polymer matrix in between these two. So if you change this distance, this is essentially our A, if you change that distance, the tunneling probability will increase by a huge amount. Okay. And now what you can imagine is that, imagine you touch the film from the top, then you are applying pressure on the film, as a result of which this distance will change, and hence the tunneling probability will change, and therefore the current that can flow through the system, the conductivity of the system actually will increase very rapidly if you just touched it, and this has been used to make touch sensitive screens. In fact, very interesting videos of many of these things are available in YouTube. I suggest that you should have a look at YouTube. You just search for quantum tunneling and you will find many of these videos. I think I will stop here. Thank you.